Hello, my name is Chris, and welcome to another edition of Careers, where we look at several professional careers, try to understand what they actually do and how Hollywood gets it wrong. Now, the goal of this, as it states, is that too many times when we see a profession being displayed on, say, a book, TV, or a movie, it's generally inaccurate and someone's had a creative license in how they portray that character, which can be a disservice to those who actually do those professions. So we want to get it from the horse's mouth itself to really understand what it is. Now, not saying that a creative license is a bad thing. Sometimes you need to change things up in a story to make it interesting, but it's good to have a foundation of reality before you start taking a creative license. If you start with a foundation of cliches that have been used for Hollywood, then how you change it there is going to be a great disservice to those that actually perform these. Now, I'm joined today with Jack, and I will tell you, you may notice that this is an audio-only version, and this is because Jack is a trucker and he's on the road. So his internet is very limited, and while we could do video, we couldn't guarantee how long we could do video. So today we have to do audio only. How are you doing, Jack?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. So let's go ahead and start off with my first question, as I ask every person who comes on here. Hollywood has certainly done a lot for truck drivers. When I think about truck driving, the first movie that comes up is the movie Convoy, which I believe was in the 70s. But I'm wondering, well, Hollywood also often has the truck driver being like the creepy loner person who, you know, is the dredge of society. They shouldn't be trusted, and no offense, are usually rapists or murderers or just very, very creepy. Which I know you're none of those things, but in your opinion, how does Hollywood get your job profession wrong?
Okay, how does Hollywood get us wrong? Well, and the a truck driver by very nature must be a very self-sufficient person. They have to be very individualistic to do the job that we do, because you're out here, in some cases, thousands of miles away from home without a safety net. You're out here on your own. And before the age of cell phones, you were really out here on your own. So the mentality of a person that does a job like that, you must be very individualistic. Now, they tend to portray that individualism as, like you were saying, creepy. The drudge of society is another example of, we're the worst of the worst in many aspects. That's one way they want to portray us, because, well, we really don't fit in a lot of ways because of our individual nature, our the nature of wanting to be sort of out here on our own and by ourselves. And I think it's hard for people who aren't that way to understand that, to understand how we are and why we're that way. So they tend to, well, that's creepy. That's, there's something wrong with those people. And that's the reason they tend, I think at least, the reason they tend to portray us that way.
So I'm gonna ask you some questions about your profession so we can try to get an understanding of what is the correct way to portray you. So I guess the most obvious question is in a nutshell, what is your job?
My job is I am a what is considered an owner operator truck driver. In other words, I own my own truck. It belongs to me, and I'm contracted to a trucking company to haul freight for them. They find the loads. They offer me different loads, and I pick which one I want. And then in my specific situation, I pull their trailer. Sometimes owner operators own their own trailer. A lot of times they pull the company's trailer. But I haul temperature sensitive uh, freight across the country from one place to another. Now, most of the time that's foodstuffs, whether it be produce, deli products, dairy, deli and dairy sort of stuff, sandwich meat and cheeses and stuff like that, or frozen anything you would find in the frozen food section. Ice cream to your frozen vegetables to your meals already prepared. All you got to do is pop them in the oven or the microwave, things like that. I haul finished product from the production facility to the grocery warehouse for the distribution center for grocery stores, but also haul the uh, raw materials from, let's say, from the farmer to to these production facilities. So that's basically what I do.
And how much do you get paid? And you don't have to be specific about that, but you can give a generalization. I mean, is it good money or what?
Um, it depends. Um, Certain times a year the money is very good. Other times of the year the money's not good at all. It's kind of seasonal in certain aspects. The period between right around Christmas to sometime in March is not a good time of year. Now, being that I'm basically, well, I am my own small business. I get paid a lot, but I also have a lot of overhead. So it's it's really hard to say without being specific. The way they pay me is so much a load, and the price varies. My dispatcher negotiates a price with the freight broker for how much how much we'll need to haul the load. So like if the freight broker wants this load hauled for $1,000, no, we need $1,200. Sometimes we get the load. Sometimes we can reach an agreement. Sometimes we can't. And so my pay fluctuates all the time. I never know from day to day.
So you're on the road a lot. So is your cab one where you can basically live in it, or are you using a lot of hotels?
No, I have a sleeper cab. And, just basically, it's smaller than a twin size bed, but not too much smaller. It's for one person, it's plenty big enough. I have a little small refrigerator, kind of like one of them little office refrigerators where I can keep some drinks cold and stuff like that. And yeah, I basically live in the cab. I go into truck stops to use the restroom or to eat or shower, things like that.
But you're saying that it's about a twin size bed. I mean, doesn't it ever get cramped? I mean, I know that's kind of a stupid question, but it's my question anyways.
Well, it took some getting used to. Um, One of the things is, I'm married. It took some getting used to not having, when I started doing this, I was used to my wife being in the bed beside of me. It took some time to get used to not having her there. But no, not really. Not for me, it doesn't. Now, I could understand how for some people it probably would. because, well, uh, I really don't know how to explain it. The sleeper of my truck is about, oh, let's see, I would say 100 inches wide. I don't know exactly the conversion on that to metric, but and then um, I don't know, 6 or 8 feet in depth. So you're looking at, what would that be? About 16 square feet? No, what would that be? 64 square feet of space. So the size of a decent walk-in closet.
Well, how well do you sleep when you're on the road?
Most times I sleep pretty well. Now, you always have the occasions of bouts of insomnia where it's difficult to go to sleep. But most time I sleep pretty well. The DOT mandates that I cannot work more, or I cannot drive more than 11 hours before I have to take a 10-hour sleeper break. Um, so now that that can work out to where you're like on a swing shift. So you can find yourself trying to sleep in the middle of the day, and that usually doesn't work well for me, but it's the law. At least at this point in time, it's the law. They tend to want to change the laws pretty regularly. But yeah, usually I sleep pretty well. I lay in my sleeper and watch television on my phone or whatever, and uh, get my what is comfortable for me 6 to 8 hours of sleep every night,
So
or every 24 hours.
I recently took a road trip myself where I drove from Phoenix, Arizona to Philadelphia and then drove all the way back, and I used two different routes. And for me, that was just, I couldn't imagine doing that for a living. And then, of course, we had to stay at hotel rooms. But I mean, if you're staying in your truck, where is it that you park your truck every time you need rest?
Rest areas, truck stops. Sometimes the shipper or receiver. Sometimes they have places where you can park. I park on the side of the street in industrial parks, just wherever I can find. And uh, right now, it, it it can be a problem if you're trying to find a parking spot at the wrong time of day. But I just try to park it wherever I can. Um, you get down in an industrial park, and if the streets are wide enough and if they allow you to, you can just park there. But most of the time I try to go to a truck stop. That way I've got restroom facilities, and can get something to eat and all that.
Well, and I apologize for asking this, mostly because you're a friend and I don't want to know, but it's an important question. What is the hygiene situation like?
um Not the greatest. You carry A lot of truck drivers carry baby wipes with them, so if they can't take a shower, they can wipe down with those baby wipes. There's days or times that I go 4 or 5 days without having a shower, because the way it all works out, I'm not able to stop long enough at a truck stop to take a shower. um, it's not as simple as walking in and spending 30 minutes to take a shower. If you come in the wrong time of day, you're liable to wait 2 or 3 hours just to get, a shower, just to get one of the little rooms to take a shower in before, because you have to wait in line. So, there's times it works out you don't get one.
Okay, so you mentioned that you own your cab. How common is it for truck drivers to own their cab?
It used to be very common. It's becoming less and less common. Um, it's I guess when it first started, that was probably a large, well, I'm not going to say half, but you know 20, 30, 40, 50%, somewhere in there, of the trucks on the road were like me, owner operators. Now I would be surprised if it was 10%.
And did you start your career owning, or did you start off using whatever equipment they gave you and you eventually saved up to buy your own?
No, I started off driving trucks for other people, driving their trucks. Um, a lot of over the road, and when I mean over the road, that's where you're spending nights out on the road driving a sleeper truck. A lot of those companies won't hire an owner operator or a truck driver unless they're 24 years old. Now, your larger fleets, your big names that everyone would recognize, yes, they will hire you at 21 when you can get your CDLs. That's as of right now, to get a CDL to drive a tractor trailer, you have to be 21 years old. A lot of those companies will hire you, but a lot of the other companies won't. Your smaller companies, the company that I'm leased to, would not hire me until I turned 24. So I drove trucks local there around home. Day cabs is what they're called. That's the trucks without a sleeper on. They're called day cabs. And, that was home every night. And I just drove there till I got 24 and then bought my first truck.
And how old are you now?
I am 37 years old.
Wow, I feel old. I'm 38. And so you've been doing this for what, 15 or 25 years? Well, I can't do math right now. 20 years would be right, right?
Let's see. I'm 37. I'll be 38 this year. I've been doing it since I was 21. So what is that? 17 years.
Yeah, that sounds a
Yeah, I
lot
think
better.
that's right.
Now my
Yeah,
fans
and
know I suck at math.
no, I've been doing it for 17 years, but my father was an owner operator at least all of my life until he retired. And both of my grandfathers were truck drivers. They're what, they were company drivers. That's what you are when you drive someone else's truck. You drive the fleet's truck, you're called a company driver. Um, both of them were company drivers. My One of my grandfathers, my mother's father, drove a truck for the Missouri Pacific Railroad, which later they were either bought out or merged with Union Pacific Railroad.
So it was a family legacy. Was there any sort of family encouragement for you to take this, or did they just say, hey, you can do whatever you want?
Actually, it was the opposite. They wanted me to do something else, but
Why was that?
because my father, especially my grandfather, on my father's side, died when I was 8 years old, and then my other grandfather died when I was probably 19 or 20, somewhere in there. And at that time, I was a mechanic. And I'd never expressed any desire to him to drive a truck. It wasn't until later on that I'd made up my mind that I wasn't going to do it, and tried to become a mechanic. And I was an okay mechanic, but it was that desire to drive a truck that did it. I just couldn't get rid of. I couldn't shake it. My mother, my father, both of my grandmothers tried to discourage me from doing it, and I said, no, this is what I'm doing, because they know how hard it is out here and how it can be dangerous. And uh, I forget by how much, but it shortens your life expectancy doing this job. And so they didn't want me to do it.
Well, what kind of stresses are you facing?
It's very stressful. You're always up against the clock. You're always, you're constantly watching the traffic around you, especially in the cities. It just trying to make it somewhere on time. trying not to get somebody hurt. You're driving a vehicle doesn't stop very well, doesn't handle very well, so evasive maneuvers a lot of times is not an option, and all of that is weighing on you all the time. I tell people that when they talk about driving a truck versus driving a car, I was like, well, a truck and a car both have a steering wheel, and that's basically where the similarities end. It's very different, and so you are under a lot of pressure. I forget it. I read an article one time, and maybe you can look this up. This may have changed, but the stresses on a truck driver are equivalent to some other jobs that you normally typically associate with being high stress, like a surgeon. It's, I'm not specifically a surgeon, but I'm just giving that as an example of a high stress job.
Well, if I remember correctly, it goes air traffic controller, call center representative, truck driver.
It's something like that, yeah. It's
and
very
I've been
stressful.
a call center representative, so I know how stressful that job is.
Yeah.
You want to just yell at people all the time, but you've got to do it in the nicest way possible.
Yes.
I usually fail.
Yeah, it's, you got a dispatcher, there's the old saying, loaded like a freight train, dispatched like an airplane. Well, why ain't you already there? All the time. My dispatcher's not like that because she knows the business. She knows about driving a truck, so she's not like that. But a lot of the times I deal directly with the freight brokers, and they're like, well, why aren't you already there? Well, dude, you need to see what I've been putting up with for the past week or past 2 days or whatever, however long I've been hauling your load. You need to see what I've been putting up with. So, yeah, it's stressful.
So, and that segues into another point, because I actually had a friend who was a truck driver, and she was actually pretty young. I think she was like 26, but she kind of insinuated that there was just a lot of pressure for her to be on time. So my question is, what kind of time frame do they give you? Is it a very narrow window that you have to do it in, or do they understand, hey, this is truck driving, it's very tough, they give you a little bit of leeway, but they still want you there as fast as possible?
It depends. Usually when you pick up a load, before you pick up that load, the pickup appointment, that's the time that you're supposed to be there to get loaded, and the delivery appointment, the time in which you're supposed to be there to deliver load, is already set. They give you that in advance. So you get there and it takes them 5 or 6 hours to load you. Well, you got to try to make that time up somewhere. Sometimes they don't give you enough time, and you have to reschedule appointments and all that kind of stuff. A lot of the times it just depends on what you're hauling. If it's a situation where you're going to pull into the yard at the receiver and drop your trailer out there on the yard, and they'll just get to it when they get ready for it, well, they really don't care. It's it's a first come first served. We're open from 8 to 5. Just get here when you can. But if you're hauling a load of lettuce, oh no, you can't. That stuff can't set out on a trailer for a day or two, longer than what it takes to get there. Or a load of tomatoes or something like that. No, you're really up against the clock with stuff like that. And so they will give you some leadway, but not much. A lot of places, if you're late, what happens is you're considered a work-in. So you get to the place and they, okay, park over there and we'll get to you when we can. Where if you're there at your appointment time, they may put you right to the dock, or you may not have to wait as long to get unloaded.
So it's like a doctor's office.
Yes, yes, you have appointments that you try your best to keep. And the reason for that is they don't want, if they've got 30 trucks coming in that day, they don't want all of them to show up 7 o'clock that morning. They want them spaced out over the course of the day. Or in the case of a lot of grocery store warehouses, they take their load, the low incoming loads in the middle of the night, and then they load their trucks out during the day to go out to the grocery stores. It's not uncommon for me to have an appointment that's 2 a.m. or 3 a.m.
So I just lost my train of thought. This is the part we're going to be cutting from the video. Well, does the contracts you have, will they dock you if you're late?
In some cases. In some cases, yeah, they will. I've seen as much as anywhere from $150 to $500.
But I mean, they know what they're getting into. I mean, this is not a job where you can be 100% reliable. I mean, you've got a lot of factors like, traffic, other people's driving, construction, weather that affects things. Plus, you have state laws that require you to take a break. I mean, how can they be so, and I apologize for saying this, cold-hearted when it comes to you giving a delivery? I mean, like I said, they know what they're getting into, and yet they'll just sit there and dock you $500 for what? If you're 3 hours late and then you have to wait until they decide to unload you?
Yes, and they don't care. They literally just don't care. They don't care what you have to do to get it there. Just be there on time. And see the deal with it, like you was talking about, the deal with the log book that I keep. That's federal law. That's federally mandated. But it's on me to make sure that I don't break the law. Well, if this major grocery store chain wants me there at that time and I have to break the law to get it there, they don't care. It's not on them.
So basically, it's passing the buck of responsibility. They paid you to do something, you do it however.
Yeah, and like I was talking about earlier, where it took them too long to load me. Well, that's not on the receiver. Doesn't care that the shipper took too long to load me. It's on me.
Yeah, I can definitely see the stress of it all. So I guess for a lot of truck drivers, there's just too much temptation to break the law in order to make your delivery.
Yeah, and with the new mandate of having to have electronic logs in most trucks, not all. I don't have to have them. But the electronic logs, you can't lie. You can't. You cannot lie. It records everything electronically, everything you do. Every time you set the parking brake, it records it and where you're at when you do it. Every time, how fast you're going and where you're, it records all of that. So you can't lie. And, in other words, fudge it and make it look right. You can't do it. So that's putting a lot of stress, a lot more stress on truck drivers. And that's the reason right now, I think I read an article the other day where here in the United States, as of right now, we have a 60 to 100,000 driver shortage. In other words, we have 60 to 100,000 less drivers than what we need.
Well, let me ask you, do you agree with the mandate that the government is doing? I mean, I know they're making your job harder, but are you in support of what they're doing, or do you hate that they're making it so much more difficult?
Yes and no. I disagree with it because, okay, if you're going to force us to stick to the rules no matter what, then you need to change the rules to where we can do it. What happened is with paper law books, you can lie. So they made the rules more and more and more strict to try to make it more difficult for you to lie. Well, then they put the electronic logs in and did not change the rules. They need to back off and make the rules more lenient. They've done a little bit of that, but not much. You can imagine you've been out on the road for 2 weeks and you get 30 minutes from your house and the electronic logbook says you got to stop and take 10-hour break. How many drivers are going to do that? The other part of that is because if I'm driving down the road and I get, into some heavy traffic, let's say in town, I might slow down to 5 mile an hour below the speed limit to be safer, to give myself more time to stop or do what I need to do to avoid a wreck. If I'm going through a rainstorm, I'll slow down to be safer. If you're on that electronic logbook, you can't slow down. Because if you slow down, it's going to record it. It's going to know you slowed down. And it's going to know, well, okay, instead of being able to run, let's say, 650 miles a day, now you can only run 640. Because you're still in that 11 hours. So
yeah, I remember my friend that I told you about. She told me a story that she was driving and there was a deer in the middle of the road, and she actually stopped, or actually no, I think she just slowed down as much as she could so the deer would get out of the way. And she's like 30 minutes later, they called her up wondering why she slowed down. And she told them, and their response was, well, you should have just driven on through. Basically, kill the deer and keep going the speed limit that you could.
Yeah. Well, it's making the roads less safer. I've seen a dramatic increase and what I would consider to be unsafe driving, and I know what it is. The guys are on the electronic logbooks, and they don't have a choice. They've got to push it. If the speed limit's 65 mile an hour, you got to drive 65 mile an hour, regardless of the traffic conditions, regardless of the weather conditions. It's very dangerous. It's made the roads less safer for everyone.
So why don't the lawmakers go after the receivers and the shippers? Why go after the truck drivers?
Well, how can I say this without getting political? Who do you think is going to have more success at getting the laws changed in their favor? Jack or Walmart?
Yeah.
Jack or FedEx? Who's going to have more success at that?
Well, why do you think the laws were changed in this way to make it more strict that you get the specific logs in that you have to have electronics? Because that seems almost counterintuitive that businesses want it there yesterday and are going to do everything to protect themselves, and yet lawmakers are changing how truck drivers can drive. It seems to be against their self-interests.
Well, it's not, because they're not the ones that, as long as their stuff still gets there on time, they don't care. They don't care what laws we have to abide by or what we have to do. As long as their stuff gets there on time, they don't care. And as long as it's not negatively affecting them, they don't care.
Well, yeah, but you mentioned that there's a less drivers out there now. And if there's less drivers out there, that means that, for the drivers that are out there, they have to compete to get them. They have to pay more money to get them, which also affects the consumer because now they have to charge more money for things. So it's like that goes against their self-interest. If they want, their stuff delivered at a decent price, they need to encourage the lawmakers to give truck drivers a lot more leeway. Wouldn't you think?
Well, they just pass the price on to their customers. That's the reason, the price of stuff has gone up, and that is part of it is the cost of shipping. The Ford Motor Company or General Motors is not going to absorb that cost. They're just going to pass it on and put it on the sticker. They're just going to add it to the sticker price.
I'm starting to wonder. Go ahead.
Well, the people that would care would be companies that have their own trucks. What I mean is like Walmart, who has their own trucks. Now, yeah, they care because they have their own trucks delivering the stuff to the store, so they care. But they don't care that much because they're already one of the top paid companies or paying companies with the best benefits and all this stuff. So they get the cream of the crop anyway. And so they're already paying high wages. And so it doesn't really affect us. We're already paying real good and everything. We keep our drivers. Our drivers aren't quitting. So we really don't care. Now, a company like FedEx, a lot of people don't know this, but those little bread trucks or little delivery trucks that come to your house, a lot of times those are owner operators. Those are or at least independent contractors where a guy owns 4 or 5 of those little trucks and hires drivers. So FedEx doesn't really care because, well, they've got all these contractors. You all deal with it. It's not on us. Now, yeah, they do have some of their own trucks, but a lot of it is owner operators.
Well, it's starting to make me wonder now, and I don't know if you can answer this. Like, every now and then I see a really good sale on something, and it's like, well, there's no holiday or anything. It's like maybe the truck driver got there on time and they don't have to, pay for extra, so they pass the savings on to us. I'm wondering how often that actually happens with what you're telling me.
Not really. One thing a lot of people don't understand is when you walk into Walmart and look at all that merchandise, Walmart doesn't own that. That's not Walmart's. When you walk into Walmart and you go and let's say the frozen food section and buy a frozen pizza, Walmart doesn't own that pizza. The company that made it still owns it, and they don't get paid until you go in there and buy it. You go in there and buy it. Walmart takes, okay, well, we sold this pizza, so we're taking a percentage, and the rest of it goes to the company. Of course, it'll go in one big lump sum, a couple months later, but it's I've had to pick up stuff that didn't sell at Walmart and take it back to the company that made it because it didn't sell. And Walmart's like, look, this stuff's been sitting here till its expiration date. We want it off our shelves.
So I guess the obvious question then is this, you've been doing this for 17 years. Is this a job that you enjoy doing, or is it that, you've just been doing it so long, there's really nothing else you can do?
I still enjoy it. I still enjoy it a lot because one thing, I'm my own boss because I'm a small business. I'm my own boss. I get to decide what I do. When I can take off when I want to. I can, I decide where I go. Where if you're a company driver, you're told where to go. Go here, get this trailer, take it to here. You're not asked, you're told. Like any other employee, here, go do this. Since I'm a owner operator, I'm a contractor. So they asked me, okay, we got this, and this. Which one of these do you want to do, or do you want to do any of them? So that there's that freedom to that. And also, there's a certain amount of a challenge to it, because I am my own boss, and I've got to make the decisions. Uh, I enjoy that. I enjoy, like I was talking about, being an individualist out here by myself on my own. I enjoy that. I don't have any coworkers that I have to worry about. The office politics, and I don't have any of that. I'm out here by myself, and I enjoy that. And yeah, I still enjoy it, um, even though it is hard. It's not an easy job. It's not a job that just anyone can do. But yeah, I do enjoy it. I enjoy it very much. And one thing I've seen is a lot of truck drivers, when it comes time to retire, they retirement doesn't sit well with them. It's something it's almost addictive. It gets in your blood. You just can't stop. Doing it. You want to keep doing it. And a lot of guys die out here on the road of old age. I 2 or 3 times I pulled in truck stops, and they'll be dragging a body bag out of a truck where the guy died in the sleeper of a heart attack or something.
Wow.
Now the medical regulations are getting more and more strict. We have to have a medical physical every 2 years to make sure that we're still in healthy enough to drive. And they're getting more and more strict on that. So that's putting a lot of the older drivers out. But you still see it. A guy, he's 70 years old and he's still driving. They can't. It's like you can't stop.
So there's a lot of talk now about self-driving cars. And I'm wondering, what do you think on the concept of a self-driving big rig? I mean, is that anywhere in the realm of possibility? Could you one day be replaced by a robot, or is it pretty secure that it's always going to be human drivers?
A little bit of both. There are certain applications where a self-driving truck could work, and they have. I believe it was Budweiser the other day delivered a load, picked up from their brewery and delivered it to the distribution center with a self-driving truck. Uh, Situations such as that, it will work, but the system is set up to have a driver in the truck, someone to interface with other people, and you're not going to have that if you've got a robot. If it's a robotic truck. um, like what I do, there's a lot of times I go to a farmer's farm and I pull up at a shed beside his house, and he's like, okay, follow me, we're going out to this field. And I load directly out of the field. They'll just dump this stuff in my trailer. Literally, they got a conveyor belt, they run in there and just pour it out on the floor of my trailer. Potatoes and carrots, okra, stuff like that. Other times I go to small mom and pop operations that are, you again, let's say Walmart. Okay, Walmart can set up their operations to handle the self-driving trucks when they come in. You know, Joe and Jane Smith out here, who might get 1 or 2 truckloads a week of something, or ship out 1 or 2 truckloads a week, they're not going to want to spend the money to get all this equipment so they can communicate and direct a self-driving truck. No, we want a driver, someone walk in here and say, hey, where do you want me? Which dock do you want me to back into? All that kind of stuff. You know, actually driving the truck down the road is probably about half of what I actually do. And then you run into the problem, well, who's going to fuel that truck? This truck's got to go from Pittsburgh to Phoenix. Well, it's going to have to get fuel a couple times along the way. Who's going to do that? It's stuff like that. The system is not set up for driverless trucks. And so I feel confident that probably for my working life, I'm pretty secure. Now, will it one day come to where all the trucks are self-driving trucks? Possibly, probably, maybe, but for right now, it's just not going to work because the system is not designed for it.
So you mentioned that you were married, and what did you marry your wife before you became a truck driver or after?
Before I met my wife, let's see, when I was, hold on, I was 18 when I met her. And her father was a truck driver. And for quite a while, her brother was a truck driver. When I met her, her brother was actually driving a truck. And so she knew the life of being the, you know, obviously her mother was the wife of a truck driver, so she's seen it firsthand. But at that time I was wanting to be a mechanic, and then when I got to wanting to be a truck driver, she was, I really don't want you to do this, but if this is what you want to do, I'll support you. And so she's been very, you know, very supportive, and everything, and she already knew what to expect. But yeah, the divorce rate among truck drivers is very high. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's very high. And believe it or not, the the ones who don't get divorced while the man, you know, the guys out on the road driving the truck, usually get divorced when he comes off the road. So the ones that make it, the marriage, it usually ends when the guy comes home and says, okay, I'm done driving a truck now. Because they've been so used to being apart that once you put them together all the time, then they can't get along.
Mm.
So yeah, it's the divorce rate's very high. Um, there's still to this day, even with the these modern trucks with, you know, have an auto shift transmission where it's, you know, kind of like an automatic car. It's technically not an automatic transmission, but you don't shift the gears, the computer shifts the gears. Even with all these advancements in making trucks more comfortable, they ride better, they drive better, all this stuff, you still don't have a lot of women out here driving. They will drive, you know, for a little while, a year or two, and then they're like, no, I don't like this. The turnover rate is very high. I want to say it's 100% nearly, you know, or like 90 something percent, you know. Uh, and usually most of that they lose in the first year. In other words, a guy gets his CDLs, and in the first year he's looking for something else to do.
Yeah, my friend I mentioned earlier, I think she only lasted for like 2 years. And, you know, her experience with it's like, it almost seemed like from the story she told me that she spent just as much time waiting for the trucks to be repaired than her actually being on the road. Now, she didn't own her rig. She had to drive other rigs, but it was just like, you know, she'd pick up a rig and it wouldn't start, or the tires were bad, or whatever. And it's just like, it made me wonder, you know, like if the conditions were better, if she would have stayed with it or what. And you having done that before, I mean, did you ever run into that where it's like a lot of times you're just waiting for them to repair the truck?
Yeah, some. You know, most of the before I bought my own truck, I was a local driver, running a day cab, so I got paid by the hour. So I didn't care if I was standing around the shop waiting on the truck to get fixed or not. You know, I was getting paid by the hour at that point. Um, but yeah, you know, that's part of what I do is, you know, the maintenance of this truck is on me. So if it sits at the shop a week, I don't get paid. I don't get a paycheck. Yeah, so that is a problem. Um, you know,
And when
that
you do the maintenance, do you go
with
back home
with
or do you
these,
do it somewhere on the road?
I try to make it back home to fix it. If it's something that it can't wait, I get it fixed out on the road. But I try to make it back home, and I do. Um, a lot of my own maintenance. When it needs brakes, I put the brakes on it. Uh, a lot of this stuff I do myself. I put clutches and transmissions in them, rear ends, the differentials. I can rebuild the motor if I had the tools to do it, but it was one of those deals. Do I spend $4,000 or $5,000 on these special tools to rebuild this engine that I might rebuild once every 7 years, or do I just hire it done? So I send it out and have someone else do it. Um, but most everything I do myself.
So, and this is deeply personal, so feel free not to answer it, but how would you say the state of your marriage is? I mean, you did say that there's just like a high divorce rate, that once you're finally together, you can't really handle being together. How would you say your marriage is as far as that respect?
Well, that's one of those things that's different for every couple. Me and my wife get along very well, so our marriage is good. Before my daughter was born, actually, while my wife was pregnant with our daughter, um, we knew that the baby was coming, and that she used to go with me every once in a while, and we knew that, well, there's going to be several years here where she can't do that because we're going to have a baby. So she got in the truck with me, and we stayed gone for 3 weeks. Me and her in the cab of this truck, and both of us sleeping in that little bed together. And we were together for 3 weeks and didn't fight, didn't argue. So for us, it's not going to be really a problem, but for a lot of people, it is.
So, would it be fair to say that being a trucker's wife is basically being a single mother?
Basically, yeah. For a lot, I provide money, most of the money, because of I'm not there to take out the trash. I'm not there to mow the grass. I'm not there to do all the stuff that normal, the husband would do. So she has to do everything herself. So the trade off is she works a job where she doesn't make as much money, but she's doing all this other stuff. So I I take up for that. I make most of the money. Um, you know, so yeah, in many aspects, she is basically a single mother, because she's there with my daughter, on her own most of the time.
And how old is your daughter now?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember if I want to say or not. uh, let's say she's 8 years old.
Okay.
I'm
So,
I'm kind of just for everyone listening, I'm kind of protective of her online. I don't post pictures of her and things like that. So just to let everyone know.
so what is it like to have a family member, a trucker? Do you know like what your wife goes through or what your daughter possibly goes through with you being on the road all the time?
Yeah, I do, because my dad was an over the road truck driver for most. Well, let's see, uh he retired in 2004 or 5 from being an over the road truck driver, and he started the year I was born. So all of my life, he was up until 2004 or 5. He was an over the road truck driver, so I knew what it was like being the child of a truck driver. It's not easy. Um, you know, you you miss them a lot because they're not around, and especially before cell phones, he would call my mom every night. You know, and because truck stops had like a bank of payphones in them back then, and when he stopped at a truck stop, he'd pick up the phone and call her, "Hey, I'm okay," and that's the only time we heard from him. Now with cell phones and everything, doing just like this hangout, you can FaceTime. It's easier, but it's still, you know, I've had friends and family members who have passed away and were buried before I could get home. You know, family members of friends, and you call them up and say, "Hey, I wish I could be there for you, but I can't get there in time." So, it's not easy, and there is definitely some drawbacks to it when it comes to stuff like that. And I think that's one of the reasons that uh, a lot of people don't like this job and don't want to do this job, because your friends are your friends that you talk to on the phone every once in a while. You don't ever get to see them. There's a friend of mine. We've been friends for. He's a truck driver too. We've been friends for, oh gosh, 10 years, and I may have seen him in person. I don't know, 5 or 6 times in that 10 years. So that is definitely a negative or a downside to it. Is that right? Family and friends. Your life is driving this truck. You eat, drink, sleep, and drive, and that's it pretty much. Go to the bathroom and take a shower.
So then, well, you did mention that this is a job that requires you to be very much an individual. So I guess you don't get much human interaction while you're doing this.
No, no, you really don't. Obviously you're on the road with other people driving cars and trucks, but you know, uh, with the exception of getting a phone call from my wife or my dispatcher, or if I'm sitting at a dock, online, with social media, with the exception of that, I might talk to two or three people a day. Stop and get fuel. You talk to the girl behind the counter. You pick up a load. You talk to the shipper, and then you talk to the receiver when you deliver a load, and that's about it. The waitress at the truck stop or whatever. So yeah, you don't get a lot of human interaction, and I think that you was talking about earlier about Hollywood depicting us as kind of creepy. Well, the lack of social interaction could have something to do with that. It does affect some people in weird ways. Um, so yeah,
Well,
it Hollywood. Oh, go ahead.
well, you do interact with other drivers on occasions. I mean, you see them like at truck stops and whatnot. I mean, what is their demeanor usually like?
You get a cross section of the population, basically. Now, again, we're very individualistic people, so a lot of truck drivers are very opinionated, um, to the point of being, some of them are just downright obnoxious. Um, and that's that individualism coming out of, I've got an opinion and I don't care whether you like it or not. You know, uh, the lack of social interaction, that, well, I'm never going to see you again. I don't care what you think of me. That sort of thing is you get a lot of guys that are very opinionated and obnoxious. Uh, One of the characters, truck driving characters, that really was a good representation of guys that I have known who drove trucks was Jerry Reed in Smokey and the Bandit. Very animated person. A lot of truck drivers are like that. Very animated. Just if you ever watch Smokey and the Bandit, Jerry Reed. I know some guys like that. Um, so that was an accurate representation of, not all truck drivers obviously, but a certain section of that population. Yeah. Um, the movie Black Dog with Patrick Swayze, Randy Travis, and Meatloaf.
Yeah.
That that was a good movie. There's two aspects of how Hollywood messes up on truck drivers. There's the characterization of the truck driver, and then there's the characterization of what truck driving is and the mechanics of the truck. The movie Black Dog was a very good story and a very good representation of modern truck drivers. Jerry Reed was the truck drivers of the 70s and 80s. This Patrick Swayze was his character in that movie was a good representation of modern truck drivers. but they screwed up on representing the truck. There was many times in that movie I had my head in my hands going, they didn't just do that, did they? You know, they didn't just act, you know, it was obvious that they did not have an actual real truck driver on the set going, no, that's not how that works. You know, so
Well, what
it,
I found with Hollywood is that there probably was somebody, and then the director is like, "Who cares? We're going to do it anyways." So,
yeah, that's true. That's very true. Um, but yeah, that was a good movie. Smokey and the Bandit one, and especially number two, was okay as far as the representation of trucks and truck driving, of course, of that era. There hasn't been a lot of good truck driving movies made here recently. You mentioned Convoy. That is a very good movie. And did you know that that was actually, when it was produced, it was a B movie and didn't get much attention? It was only later it became popular.
hmm.
And it became so popular among truck drivers later on that the hood ornament on that truck that Chris Christopherson drove, you can buy those hood ornaments at truck stops to put on your truck. You know, they actually made those hood ornaments, you know, and you can buy them because of the popularity of that movie. Um,
And I was speaking to my mom about that movie, and I was trying to understand some aspects of the plot, which didn't really help me with too much. She kind of just explained truck driving to me. But, we're talking about the whole concept of a convoy where trucks are riding together. Is that something that we see today, that, trucks will drive in a straight line like that, or what?
that's actually illegal to do
Why is
that.
that illegal?
You can't have more than, I forget what the number is. They don't enforce it, obviously, but it's actually like that convoy, and that's illegal. You can't do that. But the well, there's another thing. You were talking about the automated trucks. That's another thing. Remind me to talk to you about platooning, like platoon, but platooning. Um, the purpose of a convoy was, around that time is when CB radios became popular in the 70s. And people, the price had come down on them where people could afford to buy them, and there was a CB radio craze. Everybody had them in their cars. Truck drivers started, all truck drivers had CB radios, and the purpose was, you get two or three guys together, and it was the original social media. You can sit there and talk to each other. You talk about social interaction. Well, you talk to each other, and you kept each other awake. You kept each other alert, and you could truck for hours and hours and hours because you were just, you were talking to each other. You're having good conversation, and it was, you made friends, and it was, that was what the having the CB radio was for. And CB radios work, a mile or two, most of them, depending on the terrain, depending on the radio. So you kind of wanted to stay kind of close together so you could talk to each other. And also, it served as, okay, we got this convoy. If a guy breaks down, there's people here to help me, or help him. It was that sort of thing. It was kind of a safety in numbers thing of if this, something happens to this guy, I got friends here with me. Um, so that was, that's kind of the purpose of a convoy. Now, the platooning thing, they are starting to get trucks to communicate with each other, where this truck communicates with the next truck in front of it. And states are passing laws now allowing for a platoon. And a platoon, the difference between a platoon and a convoy is the lead truck is the boss truck. And when the driver in the lead truck touches his brakes, all the other trucks put their brakes on without their drivers having to do anything. And the purpose of that is they can run bumper to bumper, nose to tail at high speeds. And that cuts, it's kind of like geese flying in a V. The front truck cuts the wind off, and the other trucks don't have to push through the wind because they're right up behind the truck that's in front of them, and that increases fuel mileage on all the trucks behind that lead truck.
And I imagine if, say, the lead truck turns off, the next truck in the front takes control.
I guess I honestly don't know how all that works. I just read about it in a there's a couple of trucking trade journals that I get. I can't even remember the names of them right now. But they were talking about states. One of them is a journal that keeps up with the laws that are changing in each state. And it was talking about these different states who had enacted platooning laws allowing that, because tailgating in a truck is illegal. So they had to do something about the law to make it okay for these trucks to tailgate. And that was how I learned about it. I don't think it's going to work, because people weaving in and out of, trucks are all over here in the right lane. Well, this car gets up here and goes in between these two trucks and needs to get off. Well, it can't because there's not enough room. And you got 20 trucks rolling down through there. Somebody's going to get upset and they're going to be complaining and all. I just don't think it's going to work, but they're trying it.
Well, we need to go ahead and come to a close. So I just got two more questions for you. First, we mentioned about CB radios. Are CBs still used?
Not near as much as what they were. That's happened in the last 10 to 15 years of a lot of trucks don't even have them in them anymore. It was always an add-on. You bought because it was one of those things, you bought the brand you wanted, Cobra, Connex, or, the Midland. There was several different CB manufacturers. You bought the one that you liked, that you preferred, and the size and the capability. Well, nowadays, a lot of trucks don't have them. The drivers don't even buy them, and I don't understand exactly why, but that's something that's happened since I started driving. Used to, you get out on the interstate in the middle of the day, man, you couldn't, people talking over the top of each other on CB radio. You couldn't understand anybody because everybody was trying to talk at once. And now you turn on the CB radio and you might not hear anybody. It might be 2 or 3 guys way off talking or something, but you wouldn't hear anybody. And so that's something that's happened in the last, let's say, 10 or 15 years.
So, as this is directed for creative types, specifically writers, but hopefully some directors out there, what would you like people to remember about being a truck driver? How would you prefer them to depict you? I mean, certainly as honest as possible, but what advice would you give them on the correct ways to depict a truck driver?
Truck drivers are called the last of the cowboys. And the reason we're called that is that is a accurate representation of who we are. Just like the cowboys, they would load up their saddlebags and their bedroll and ride off. And they would stop at a town along the way and pick up more supplies and then go on. That's basically what we do. And that kind of mentality of, again, being out there, just a horse and a bedroll out in, the middle of nowhere by yourself. Well, I'm out here in my truck with my sleeper out there by myself. So that mentality, if you can study about the personality of cowboys and how they're portrayed and written in books and how they really were, there's a lot of Western, movies have been made and books written, if you can study that and sort of adapt it to modern times with cell phones and all this other kind of stuff, but get that personality, then you've got pretty much what truck drivers are. Yeah, we can be villains. There's bad guys out here. The movie Joyride, I think that was a good movie. And the truck driver was the bad guy in the movie. But that was a good movie. It was a good story. It was something that it was a takeoff of the movie Duel but you know, it was kind of it was along those same lines, but still, it was something that, you know, it was a story that we don't see very often in movies. A lot of stuff's been overplayed and overdone, but that movie wasn't. You know, wasn't that storyline was not something that's portrayed very often. So that was a good movie, even though the truck driver was a villain. Um, and it would be very easy for one of us to be a villain because we can murder someone, get in our truck, and leave. You know, or something like that. Is so it would be very easy for us to be a villain, but also be very easy for us to be a hero of, you know, the good Samaritan that appears out of nowhere and then disappears. You know, I've you know, if you want to get right down to it, I guess I've kind of done that a couple of times myself. You know, you come up on a wreck that's just happened, you jump out and you help, and then, you know, the cops come up and you tell them what you saw, and you jump back in your truck and you leave, and the people that you help never see you again. You know, so there's
Well, and I guess for my last question, and it's a little bit silly, but what do you think of Optimus Prime? I mean, he's basically what, a Vanderbilt truck or something? I mean, he's the kind of truck that you would drive, and yet he is like a leader and a hero. I mean, does
yeah.
that affect you in any way, or is it just like, yeah, whatever?
Oh well, no, Optimus Prime. I I just talked to him a moment ago. Yeah, he's a, he's an owner operator. A little different sort than I am because he drives for a major trucking company, and they, they have maintenance plans for him that he can partake in. Where with me, it's all on me. You know, he can put his truck in their shop and get a discount, where I have to rely on just public, you know, shops that, you know, charge more. So he's does a little different than I am. But yeah, if you there's another good guy to talk to. I mean, he's a truck driver. You know, his personality. Um, you know, there's a lot of different personalities out here. You can't just stereotype as one personality, but you know, I've talked to him and been around him and online. And yeah, there's another good guy to talk to about what it's like to be a truck driver. So,
I was talking about the Transformer.
oh, I thought you was talking about the guy online that we know. I guess we need to cut all that out, don't we?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, no, there's a guy online. Since we're gonna cut this out, man, there's a guy online. He's called Optimus Prime, and he's a truck driver. And he was more active in the MGTOW community.
No, I know
Uh,
Optimus Prime.
oh, Optimus Prime. Okay, but
I do know him. I've talked to him many times
oh, okay,
before. But I was talking
okay.
about because, well, Optimus Prime is a transformer who's also basically a big rig truck. I mean,
Hmm.
when you see like, the Transformers movies or even the cartoon, did you feel a sense of pride of, hey, that guy is a hero and he basically is the thing I drive?
Not really, as far as associating the character of the personality of that character with the truck. Not really. I didn't, but the truck was cool, man. That was a Peterbilt, and it was painted up beautiful. It looked awesome, and they went to detail in it. I remember looking at it and going, "Hey, they took some time with that because they put what is called a headache rack on the back of the cab, and that's this thing. It's a bulkhead that you put on the back of the cab, or mounts to the frame of the truck for a flatbed. Uh, a lot of flatbeds don't have the bulkhead on the front. That's so you can hang the load over the front of the trailer if it's something longer than your trailer. You had out there, so the back of the cab when they hung chains from the around, because they took time to get that accurate, and the kudos to them for that. That's to me, I guess my pet peeve is less about the person, the truck driver, when I see a movie, because there is a lot of different people out here, but it's more about do some research and take some time to understand how a truck works, understand how it's driven, understand, you don't have to you're more character because you're writing and you're putting out there the character's internal thoughts. I understand that you want to be a little more focused on the character, but when some of that's one thing I do. I ride down the road and I listen to audiobooks a lot, and some of my favorite writers are the ones that get the little things right. And the reason for that is I can tell they put effort into it, and that makes the book better to me.
I definitely agree.
The little details.
I definitely agree with that. One of the things that I teach about is world building. And I often tell people, you need to design this world. Even if there's an aspect of this world you design that doesn't make it into the story, when I read a book that has done that, you can tell that they have really thought out everything because of just how well it's presented. So I definitely agree that you got to get those little details.
The Tom Clancy books, the Jack Ryan series, that's some of my favorite books. What was the Jack Reacher? Who was that? Lee Child. Lee Child wrote the Jack Reacher novels, and those are some really good books. I'm also a fan of Clive Cussler. That's CLIVE CUSSLER. He's got some really good books. The Oregon Files, that series of books is really, it's if you're into it's nearly bordering on sci-fi as far as it's based in this reality in this world, but it's a big ship, and this ship is got super capabilities. So yeah, it's really good. But like you say, take time to pay attention to the details and get them accurate. One of my pet peeves with Black Dog is watching Patrick Swayze shift the gears. That's not how you shift gears in a truck. It just, when the guy climbs up on the back of the cab, the guy on the motorcycle climbs up on the back of the cab, and he goes to pulling the airlines off the trailer, when nothing happens, except the fuel gauge starts to drop in the truck, and I'm going, what? The thing of it is, and while it shows the buttons on the dash pop out, that's the parking brake buttons. If you're going down the road in a big truck and you were to climb up on the back of the cab and there's a red airline, a blue airline, and a green electrical line, the green electrical line just runs the lights. You unplug that green line, nothing happens. You pull off the blue line, nothing happens until the truck driver gets ready to hit the brakes, and he wouldn't have trailer brakes. You pull off the red airline, the trailer brakes lock down. And it's just little stuff like that just got on my nerves with that movie. But anyway, I'm ranting.
No, it's fine. That's good. I was thinking about the movie Super Troopers, and there's a scene where they're trying to drive a big rig, and he just gets in there, turns on the engine, tries to shift the gears, and basically nothing's happening. It's like, you do know how to drive a truck, right? And I've seen sometimes where people have tried to ride a truck and they just can seem to do it instantly. It's like, it's not that easy to just get into a truck and drive it.
Yeah. What was the movie with Bruce? It was Die Hard, Live Free or Die Hard. That movie was great, and kudos for the special effects and the action. But a lot of the truck driving scenes was like, oh gosh, why did they? It nearly ruined the whole movie. Now I will say this: where he hits, or the top of the cab comes off, and he's driving it and it looks basically like an Army Jeep. There's no windshield or no top of the cab. Believe it or not, that was accurate because my dad did that once. So that can happen as far as the top of the cab come off in an accident, because believe it or not, everything from the windshield up is just nothing but a sheet of fiberglass. You have an accident going down the road and get a lot of air coming in the cab, and it will pull the top of the cab off. So that, little things like that people probably thought was, that could never happen. Well, that could actually. But the deal where he gets it way up on its side and then gets it back, no. If you get that far over, it's gone. There's no getting it back. Well,
I'm going to go ahead and end it here. You have been fantastic. I hope that a lot of people listen to this and really get something out of it on how to properly depict a character who is a truck driver. I do like what you said. There's all sorts of personality types, so there's a lot of room for what kind of character you have. But, get the details right about the truck itself. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, and, individualistic, sort of cowboy-ish type. If you can take a personality and sort of shape it towards that or lean it that way, that would probably work, because there's all kinds out here, but we're very individualistic type people.
And for anyone who's not an individualistic that tries to do it, will most likely quit in a short time.
Yes. They won't last long at it because of the lack of social interaction, the lack of interaction with family and friends, basically. Yeah, and being just lonely.
All right, so I thank everyone for watching this. I encourage anyone out there that, who has a profession that they would like to talk about, that they're tired of Hollywood getting it wrong or writers getting it wrong, and, really want to talk about it, contact me. Let me know. You can message me on YouTube. You can find me on Twitter. That's at AuthorVotey, AuthorVotey. They'll be probably on the screen. So definitely contact me. Let me know. And feel free to support me, because, I really want to do these things, but, I'm disabled. I can't really work. But I love doing this stuff for you. So, you can find me on Udemy. I haven't loaded up a course yet, but I will be doing that very soon. And I'll be loading up a number of courses. So if you want to take more of a formal class, check me out there. If you love what I'm doing on here and you want to leave me a tip, go to patreon.com/concrete desk. And that's spelled normal, just concrete desk. And, give me $1 or $2 or $5 or $100, however much you think my quality is and my effort is. I would appreciate every little bit. It goes to me getting health insurance and, getting my life sorted out. Beyond that, please check out other things on my channel. Be sure to give me a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button, that little notification bell, share it on social media, leave a comment down below, especially for Jack. You have a question for Jack, just put it down below and I'll make sure to ask Jack and get your response as soon as I can. Any final things you want to say, Jack?
Just thank you for having me on. Thank you for allowing me to share all this. I hope it helps people. If they're considering writing and they want to put a truck driver in the script, I hope it was helpful. And, if there's a lot of questions and you want to bring me back, I'd be more than happy to do so. I'm glad to be able to pass this on.
All right. Well, I certainly hope that people have lots and lots of questions. Hint, hint, hint. But thank you, everyone. And check me out for my next video on something. Take care.